The V, when a relationship ends, especially with someone you truly cared about, the natural urge is to seek something we call closure. That final conversation, that explanation, that one last moment where things make sense. But here's the truth. No one tells you closure is not something she gives you. It's something you give yourself. And the moment you internalize that, everything begins to shift. Because the longer you wait for her to bring you peace, the longer you stay stuck in a version of reality that only feeds your pain. You see, when you chase closure from her, you're still chasing her energy. You're saying, I need you to give me the permission to move on. But she already made her decision, whether through words, silence, or her actions. And the longer you look outward for answers, the more you delay the inward journey that actually heals you. Sometimes closure doesn't come with an explanation, a clean cut, or even a goodbye. Sometimes it comes from your decision to stop needing one. So many men get trapped in this cycle, writing that long message, rehearsing what they'd say if they had 5 more minutes, replaying that last argument to figure out what went wrong. You start thinking that if she could just sit down and listen, if she could just understand, maybe it would end better. But here's the raw truth. There is no perfect ending to something that already broke. You're trying to cleanly close something that was messy by nature. And that keeps you emotionally attached to the idea of a resolution rather than focusing on your healing. The truth is, you don't need her to agree with your perspective. You don't need her to validate your emotions. You don't even need her to be sorry. What you need is to walk away with your dignity intact. That means letting go of the desire to have the last word. Letting go of the temptation to post cryptic quotes on social media, hoping she'll notice. Letting go of the idea that she holds the key to your peace. Because she doesn't. She never did. You just thought she did. Now comes the hard part, detachment. And detachment isn't a one-time act, it's a process. It's the discipline of making micro decisions every day that take you back to yourself. It starts with the obvious things. Stop checking her social media. Stop asking mutual friends about her. Stop keeping the door slightly open just in case she decides to walk back through. Every time you look back, you delay your own progress. But detachment also means deeper emotional shifts. It means no longer letting her occupy your mind rent-free. It means reclaiming the space she used to take up in your heart and rebuilding it with purpose, not nostalgia. And that doesn't happen overnight. You're going to have days where you miss her energy, her smile, her presence. That's normal. Don't fight it, but don't feed it either. Feel it. Acknowledge it. And then remind yourself why you're choosing to move forward. Because pain is inevitable. But staying stuck, that's a choice. Now, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not weak for feeling pain. You're not weak for reminiscing. You're not weak for wondering if she still thinks about you. That's part of being human. But strength isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to feel that emotion and still choose your healing. And here's something else. They say time heals, but that's only half the truth. Time alone won't heal anything unless you use it to reflect, because healing without reflection is just distraction. So now is the time to ask yourself, what did I learn? What was I tolerating that I shouldn't have? What did I ignore in myself while trying to keep her happy? Pain without reflection is just suffering, but pain with reflection becomes wisdom, and that wisdom becomes the foundation for your next chapter. And part of that wisdom is learning the art of forgiveness. Now, before you tense up, I'm not talking about forgiving her because she deserves it. I'm talking about forgiving her so you can let go of the emotional anchor that's still tying you to her energy. You see, anger, bitterness, and resentment, they feel powerful at first. But over time, they rot the soul. They keep you locked in the past. They trick you into thinking you're moving on when really you're still orbiting her memory. Forgiveness isn't a green light for her behavior. It's not you saying what she did was okay. It's you choosing not to let it define you anymore. When you forgive, you're cutting the cord. You're saying, I release you not because you earned it, but because I refuse to carry this weight any longer. And that's powerful. So if you're waiting for her to come back with answers, stop. If you're hoping for a moment of remorse from her, stop. Instead, close this chapter for yourself. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with quiet, dignified strength. You don't need her to finish the story. You're the author now, and you get to decide where the next chapter begins. Sometimes the hardest closure is the one that never comes. No text, no explanation, no apology, just silence. And that silence can echo louder than words ever could, because it forces you to sit with the unknown, with the unanswered questions. But here's the truth. No closure is a closure. Her silence is her answer. Her distance is her decision. Her absence is her final word. And you can either stay stuck trying to solve the puzzle of what went wrong, or you can accept the pieces as they are, incomplete, and choose to move forward anyway. Because if you keep chasing meaning in someone's silence, you're placing your emotional healing in the hands of someone who already let go. And that's not power, that's delay. You deserve better than waiting for a ghost to speak. But if there are still words inside you, things left unsaid, emotions that never got to breathe, say them, not to her, but to yourself. Write them down, record them if you need to. Cry if you have to. Let it out. But understand, you're not doing it to get a response. You're doing it to give yourself closure. Because your healing isn't dependent on her listening. It's dependent on you finally speaking for you. This is where many men get stuck. They believe that unless she hears what they have to say, it doesn't count. That unless she understands how deeply they were hurt, the pain won't be validated. But healing doesn't come from being heard. It comes from hearing yourself. And sometimes the most powerful closure isn't shared, it's private, it's intimate, it's internal. Once you've said your piece, whether on paper, in your mind, or to a voice memo, you'll never send, close it, burn the paper, delete the message. Let that be the last time her name is part of your healing process. Not because she doesn't matter, but because your future matters more. Now this next part is where many men forget who they are. It's time to rebuild your identity. You were someone before her, and now you're someone after her. But who are you without her story woven into your day? You see, we often get so caught up in someone else's presence, their routines, their voice, their validation, that we lose pieces of ourselves. And when they leave, we don't just miss them, we miss us. The version of us that existed when they were around. But now it's time to find yourself again. Start small. Revisit old habits you abandoned. Reignite passions that had to take a back seat. Create new rituals that don't revolve around her energy. Because the longer you define yourself by what you lost, the longer you remain a prisoner to a story that's already over. Ask yourself, what do I love? What drives me? What kind of man do I want to be? Not for her, but for myself. This isn't just about moving on, it's about rising. You're not just closing a relationship, you're opening a new version of you, a stronger, wiser, more grounded you. But don't make the mistake of only letting go of the relationship. You have to let go of the fantasy too. Because what hurts the most is often not who she was, but who you thought she could be. The future you envisioned, the life you were planning, the someday that will never come. And here's the painful truth. She may have never been that person in your fantasy. You may have been in love with potential, with hope, with possibility, not with reality. And that realization stings. But it also sets you free, because now you get to grieve the full picture. Not just her, but the story you built around her. And once you release that vision, you make space for something real, something grounded, something based on truth, not projection. And when you're finally ready to walk away, do it with power. Not with games, not with trying to make her jealous, not with desperate attempts to win the breakup. Because real strength is silent. It doesn't need a stage, it doesn't seek revenge, it just moves forward with quiet confidence. There's such a difference between disappearing in pain and walking away in peace. One says, I lost. The other says, I self-learned. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to make a dramatic exit. Just leave with dignity. Let your absence speak the words your ego wants to scream. Because in the end, peace will always be louder than pride. And maybe one day she'll realize what you were. Maybe she won't. That's not your concern anymore. Your story is no longer tied to her approval. You stir free. And that is the true art of closing with her.